On a quiet suburban evening, the sky was painted with the soft hues of dusk as Michael Hayes drove down the familiar streets, the steady hum of the car engine blending with the distant cheers from the soccer field. His son, Ethan, sat beside him, cheeks flushed from the game, his worn soccer ball resting between his knees. Michael glanced over, catching Ethan's bright smile, the simple joy of the evening a balm against the weariness of his daily grind. They had just wrapped up another soccer practice, a ritual Michael cherished despite the exhaustion that followed each day's work. As a single father, these moments were sacred, a chance to share laughter and stories, to be fully present in a world that often pulled him in too many directions. The road ahead was quiet, lined with tall oaks whose leaves whispered softly in the evening breeze. Michael's mind wandered to the small dinner waiting at home, the routine comfort of their modest apartment. He was about to ask Ethan about his favorite play from the game when a sudden, violent crash shattered the calm. A screech of tires, shattering glass, and the metallic groan of mangled steel filled the air. Michael's heart jumped as he slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a stop mere feet from the chaos ahead. Ahead, a sleek black vehicle had lost control, spinning wildly before slamming into a lamppost. The impact was brutal, the car flipped onto its side, smoke billowing from the crumpled hood, a flicker of flames licking the edges. Without hesitation, Michael's instincts kicked in. He threw the gear into park, unbuckled his seatbelt, and swung open the door. Ethan's wide eyes met his father's, a silent question hanging between them. "Stay here," Michael said firmly, voice steady despite the adrenaline rushing through his veins. Ethan nodded, gripping his soccer ball tightly as Michael hurried toward the wreckage. The world seemed to slow as he approached, the heat from the fire prickling his skin, mingling with the acrid smell of burning rubber. Inside the overturned vehicle, a figure struggled, trapped and vulnerable. Michael's breath caught as he recognized her, Emily Carter, the actress whose face graced magazine covers and billboards, now caught in this terrifying moment. Fear threatened to grip him, but he pushed it back. Memories of his own son flashed through his mind, the fragility of life in stark relief against the roaring flames. He reached the car door, which was jammed tight against the pavement. Pulling with all his strength, he managed to create a small gap. "Emily. Can you hear me?" His voice was sharp, urgent. She groaned, eyes fluttering open, pain etched across her face. "I'm here to help," he assured her, scanning for a safe way to free her without worsening her injuries. The car's interior was a twisted cage, metal bent and shattered glass sparkling dangerously. Michael knew time was running out, the fire was spreading, smoke thickening with every passing second. Drawing on a well of courage he hadn't realized he possessed, he reached inside, carefully maneuvering to lift her out. Emily was lighter than he expected, but he could feel the tremor of pain in her body as he cradled her. Her breaths were shallow, but she clung to consciousness. Michael's heart pounded, his hands shook just slightly as he pulled her free, the heat from the flames scorching the edges of his jacket. Behind them, the car cracked and hissed, molten metal dripping like a slow rain. Michael barely had time to set Emily down before the vehicle erupted in a roar, flames surging skyward. He shielded her from the worst of the heat, scanning frantically for help. Ethan's small figure stood frozen at the curb, eyes wide with shock but safe. Michael called out to him, voice hoarse but steady. "Stay back, Ethan. Call 911. The boy nodded, pulling out his phone with trembling fingers. Michael knelt beside Emily, checking for a pulse, relief flooding through him when he found it steady but weak. His mind raced, he had no medical training, but years of watching emergency shows and reading first aid manuals surged forward. "Hang on, Emily," he murmured, pressing a jacket sleeve to a bleeding wound on her arm, trying to stem the flow. Her eyelids fluttered again, and she whispered, "Thank you." Michael's gaze hardened. There was no time for doubt. He repositioned her carefully, keeping her airway clear, speaking softly to keep her awake. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, help was coming, but he couldn't afford to wait. Minutes stretched, each one an eternity. The crowd that gathered at a safe distance murmured in hushed tones, some filming with their phones, others calling out words of encouragement. Michael ignored them all, focused solely on the woman he had pulled from death's grasp. When the paramedics arrived, their practiced efficiency was a stark contrast to his frantic efforts. They took over, assessing Emily quickly, praising Michael for his quick action. As they loaded her onto the stretcher, she squeezed his hand weakly, a silent thank you that spoke volumes. Michael stepped back, his chest heaving, sweat mingling with soot on his face. Ethan rushed to his side, wrapping his arms around his father without a word. In that embrace, Michael found a moment of peace amid the chaos. As the ambulance pulled away, Michael watched the flashing lights fade into the night, the gravity of what had just happened settling over him. He had faced fear head-on, risking everything for a stranger, a famous stranger with a fragile life hanging in the balance. That night, driving home was no longer routine. The world felt larger, more urgent. Michael's thoughts swirled with questions and doubts, but beneath it all was a quiet certainty: he had acted when it mattered most. And that choice, born from love and courage, would ripple through their lives in ways he could not yet imagine. The night settled quietly around Michael Hayes as he and Ethan finally arrived home, the adrenaline of the evening beginning to ebb, leaving a heavy weariness in its wake. Inside their modest apartment, the familiar hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of a wall clock filled the silence. Michael sat at the kitchen table, rubbing his hands together, trying to steady his racing thoughts. Ethan, still clutching his soccer ball, perched on a chair, eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fatigue. The events from just hours ago replayed in Michael's mind: the screeching tires, the burning car, the desperate grasp to free a stranger from death's clutches. But beneath the surface of that night's heroism lay a quieter, more personal story, one shaped by loss, responsibility, and the relentless challenges of single parenthood. Michael rose, moving toward the small shelf above the kitchen counter where a worn leather wallet rested. He retrieved it carefully, flipping it open to reveal a faded photograph tucked inside. The image was of his late wife, Laura, smiling against a backdrop of autumn leaves, her eyes full of warmth and love. Beside her, a younger Ethan beamed, his small arms wrapped around her neck in a tender embrace. He traced the edges of the photo with a thumb, the memory of that day flooding back, the laughter, the plans they made, the promises whispered in the quiet moments before everything changed. Laura had been taken from them 2 years earlier, succumbing to a sudden illness that left a void impossible to fill. Since then, Michael had devoted himself entirely to raising Ethan, balancing the demands of work and parenting with a quiet determination. The small apartment, with its scuffed floors and second-hand furniture, was a testament to his sacrifices. He worked long hours as a mechanic in a local garage, the steady paycheck barely enough to cover bills and keep food on the table. Yet, every night, he made sure to be there for Ethan, helping with homework, cooking dinners, and attending every soccer practice he could. The weight of single parenthood pressed heavily on him. There were moments when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm, when the loneliness crept in like a shadow at the edge of his resolve. But he never let those moments show, especially not to Ethan. His son deserved stability, love, and the strength of a father who would always be there. Michael's phone buzzed on the counter, pulling him from his reverie. A text message from his sister, Claire, a steady presence in their small family, appeared, saw the news. Proud of you. Call me when you can. He typed a quick reply, grateful for her support but hesitant to share the full weight of his feelings. Later, as Ethan prepared for bed, Michael watched him carefully. Their boy moved with a quiet grace, brushing his teeth and changing into pajamas under the soft glow of a bedside lamp. Michael's eyes lingered on the way Ethan's forehead creased slightly when he concentrated, a mirror of his own expressions. The resemblance was striking and comforting, a reminder that part of Laura lived on through their son. Dad, Ethan's voice broke the silence, soft and tentative. Do you think I was brave today? Michael smiled, pulling the soccer ball from the floor and setting it beside the bed. I think you were very brave, he said, kneeling down to meet Ethan's gaze. You stayed calm, called for help, and looked out for me. That's what being brave is all about. Ethan's smile was small but genuine, and Michael felt a swell of pride. These moments, though ordinary, were the fabric of their lives, woven with love, resilience, and hope. Later that night, Michael sat alone in the living room, the quiet punctuated only by the distant sounds of passing cars. He thought about the stark contrast between his world and the one that Emily Carter inhabited, the glamorous life of a famous actress, surrounded by cameras and flashing lights. He had seen her on television countless times, her face a symbol of success and fortune. Yet tonight, she had been vulnerable and human, dependent on his courage and quick thinking. The gulf between their lives was vast, yet in that moment at the crash site, it had disappeared. A man, driven by love for his son and an innate sense of duty, had stepped into the unknown to save a stranger. Michael's thoughts turned inward, reflecting on the road that had brought him here. The loss of Laura had forced him to grow in ways he never anticipated. The quiet nights spent rocking a crying infant, the endless days juggling work and childcare, all had forged a resolve to give Ethan the best life possible, no matter the cost. He reached for the worn photo again, tucking it carefully back into his wallet. It was more than a picture, it was a symbol of everything he fought for, the memories of a love lost and the promise of a future he was determined to build for his son. As dawn approached, Michael resolved to keep moving forward. The challenges would come, as they always did, but he was ready. For Ethan, for Laura's memory, and for the unexpected moments that reminded him of the strength he carried within. The quiet suburban apartment, filled with the soft morning light, stood as a sanctuary, a place where a father's love and determination quietly shaped the lives of those he held most dear. Days after the crash, Michael Hayes found himself navigating a world far removed from the quiet routines of his everyday life. The phone calls had started almost immediately, calls from Emily Carter's representatives, from reporters eager to capture the story of the unknown hero who had saved a star. The sudden attention was overwhelming, threatening to unravel the carefully balanced life Michael had built for himself and Ethan. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the curtains of his modest living room, Michael sat on the worn couch, the hum of the television low in the background. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. He opened it to find a woman standing there, Emily's personal assistant, holding a small envelope. "Mr. Hayes. Emily asked me to deliver this," she said softly. Michael accepted the envelope, curiosity mingling with caution. Inside was a handwritten note, simple and sincere. Thank you, Michael. For your courage, and for reminding me of what truly matters. When you're ready, I'd like to meet you. Emily. The message stirred something unexpected within him, a mix of gratitude and an uneasy sense of connection to someone from a world so different from his own. A few days later, Michael found himself stepping into a chic cafe downtown, the kind of place he rarely visited. He scanned the room, nervous yet compelled. At a corner table sat Emily Carter, her presence unmistakable. Her face bore the marks of recovery, pale but determined, eyes that had seen too much yet still held a spark of life. "Michael," she greeted him with a tentative smile, rising to shake his hand. "Thank you for coming." He nodded, settling into the chair opposite her. "I'm glad to see you're okay," he said quietly. Emily's gaze softened. "Because of you, I am." Their conversation unfolded slowly, peeling back layers rarely seen by the public. Emily spoke candidly about the pressures of fame, the relentless scrutiny, the loneliness behind the flashing cameras, the isolation that came with living a life so public yet so solitary. "I thought I had it all," she confessed, voice tinged with vulnerability. "Money, success, fans, but sometimes it feels like I'm just pretending. Like no one truly knows me." Michael listened, struck by the honesty in her words. Here was a woman who had everything the world coveted, yet she wrestled with the same fears and doubts that haunted so many. He shared bits of his own life in return, the challenges of raising Ethan alone, the ache of losing Laura, the quiet battles fought away from the spotlight. Their worlds, so different on the surface, revealed unexpected parallels, the need for connection, the desire to be understood. As the afternoon light waned, Michael felt a tentative bond forming. Emily's gratitude was genuine, but more than that, there was a shared humanity that transcended their disparate circumstances. Yet beneath the warmth of their conversation, Michael grappled with a familiar tension, the sense of being out of place. He was a mechanic and a single father, far removed from the glamour and glitter of Emily's realm. The thought of stepping into her world, even briefly, stirred a quiet unease. After their meeting, the story of Michael's heroism spread through the media, thrusting him into an unexpected spotlight. Reporters sought interviews, neighbors asked questions, and social media buzzed with admiration and curiosity. The intrusion challenged the privacy and simplicity he cherished. Michael found himself at a crossroads, torn between the desire to protect his son from the glare of fame and the realization that his actions had resonated far beyond his own life. The attention was both a blessing and a burden. Emily reached out again, offering support and encouragement. Their friendship blossomed, grounded in mutual respect and the shared experience of vulnerability. She invited him to charity events and community gatherings, places where their worlds intersected in meaningful ways. Despite his reservations, Michael began to see the potential to use this newfound visibility for good. The idea of advocating for causes close to his heart, road safety, emergency preparedness, took root. Emily's platform offered a powerful vehicle to reach others, to turn his ordinary act of courage into something larger. But the journey was not without challenges. Michael struggled with feelings of inadequacy amid the glittering spotlight, questioning whether he belonged. He wrestled with the fear that his simple life might be overshadowed or lost entirely in the whirlwind of attention. Through it all, Ethan remained his anchor, a reminder of why he guarded their quiet world so fiercely. Michael resolved to navigate this new terrain with care, balancing the demands of public life with the sacred responsibility of being a father. The unexpected connection between a humble mechanic and a celebrated actress became a testament to the unpredictable ways lives can intersect. In their shared moments, Michael discovered not only gratitude and friendship but a renewed sense of purpose, a chance to bridge worlds and make a difference beyond what he had ever imagined. The days that followed brought a whirlwind of change for Michael Hayes, sweeping him deeper into a world he had never sought but could no longer ignore. The ordinary rhythm of his life, work at the garage, evenings with Ethan, quiet weekends, was punctuated by interviews, public appearances, and a growing sense of responsibility that stretched beyond his own modest circle. At first, the attention felt intrusive, a spotlight he neither wanted nor felt prepared to stand beneath. Reporters' questions probed into his private life, social media buzzed with speculation and praise. The neighborhood, once a sanctuary, became a stage where whispers and stares followed him. Michael felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that was unfamiliar. But amid the chaos, a new purpose began to take shape. After one particularly candid interview about the dangers of distracted driving and emergency response, Michael received a call from a local community center. They invited him to speak at an upcoming event focused on road safety awareness. The invitation was unexpected but welcomed. He hesitated before accepting, aware that stepping into this role meant embracing the very visibility he had tried to avoid. Yet, the thought of turning his experience into something meaningful for others, potentially saving lives, resonated deeply. Emily Carter stood by his side through it all. At public events, she was a steady presence, lending her voice and platform to amplify his message. Together, they launched a campaign promoting awareness about the importance of vigilance on the roads and the critical nature of emergency preparedness. Their partnership was a blend of Michael's grounded, first-hand perspective and Emily's wide-reaching influence. The campaign gained traction quickly. Community leaders, schools, and local law enforcement rallied behind the cause. Michael found himself speaking to groups of all ages, sharing his story not as a celebrity hero but as a father, a neighbor, someone who understood the stakes because he had faced them. Each speech honed his confidence, transforming his fear into determination. He talked about the importance of quick thinking, the value of knowing basic first aid, and the simple actions that could save lives in moments of crisis. His words carried weight precisely because they came from someone who had lived them. Emily's support was more than professional. She encouraged Michael during moments of doubt, reminding him of the impact he was making. Their friendship deepened, forged in shared purpose and mutual respect. She confided in him about her own struggles with the pressures of fame, and he, in turn, opened up about the challenges of single parenthood. Meanwhile, Michael juggled the demands of this new role with the unchanging responsibilities at home. He still worked long hours at the garage, fixed the leaky faucet in the kitchen, and made sure Ethan was ready for school each morning. The balance was delicate but necessary. During a community event at the local high school gym, Michael stood at the podium, addressing a crowd of students, parents, and city officials. His voice was steady, his message clear. "Every life is precious," he said, looking out over the faces before him. "It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. Knowing how to respond in an emergency could mean the difference between life and death. I'm here today not because I'm a hero, but because I was lucky. And I want to make sure others have that same chance." The applause that followed was heartfelt, a tangible acknowledgement of his sincerity and courage. In the weeks that followed, Michael's story continued to inspire. Local news featured segments on the campaign, social media posts shared tips and stories from people who had been moved to learn emergency skills. Michael even began collaborating with first responders to help develop community workshops focused on tactical medicine and roadside safety. The transformation was subtle but profound. Michael's identity expanded beyond the roles he had known: mechanic, single father, to include advocate, teacher, and community leader. His actions created ripples that reached far beyond the quiet streets he called home. Yet, despite the growing recognition, Michael remained grounded. He was careful to shield Ethan from the public eye, preserving the boy's innocence and privacy. At home, they continued their routines: homework, dinners, bedtime stories, unchanged by the outside world. One evening, as Michael tucked Ethan into bed, the boy looked up with a smile. "Dad, I'm proud of you." Michael's throat tightened. "I'm proud of you, too, buddy. Every day." Later, alone in the living room, Michael reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The fear and uncertainty that had once defined his response to the crash had given way to purpose and hope. He realized that courage wasn't just about the moment of action, it was about what came after, the commitment to keep moving forward. His gaze fell on the worn photograph of Laura that sat on the bookshelf, a silent reminder of the love and loss that shaped him. He reached out, fingers brushing the edges gently. "I'm doing this for you," he whispered. The campaign continued to grow, and with it, Michael's sense of belonging and contribution. He had stepped into a new role not by choice but by circumstance, and in doing so, had found a way to honor the past while building something better for the future. The quiet mechanic from a suburban neighborhood was no longer just a man raising his son alone. He had become a voice for change, a beacon of hope, and a reminder that ordinary people could make an extraordinary difference. Months had passed since the crash that had thrust Michael Hayes into an unexpected spotlight. The once quiet mechanic had embraced a new purpose, balancing the demands of fatherhood with a growing role as an advocate for safety and preparedness. The transformation was steady, marked by small victories and the steady support of those around him. One crisp Saturday morning, Michael drove Ethan to soccer practice under a sky brushed with pale blue and wisps of white clouds. The familiar routine brought a comforting rhythm to their lives, a steady anchor amid the changes. Ethan bounced in the passenger seat, excitement radiating from him as he clutched his worn soccer ball. "Ready for practice?" Michael asked, glancing over with a smile. "Yeah. Coach says I'm getting faster," Ethan said proudly. Michael chuckled, the joy in his son's voice a balm to the challenges he had faced. The journey from that fateful evening when he pulled a stranger from a burning car to this peaceful moment was still vivid in his mind. Just days earlier, he had received news that brought a profound sense of closure. Detective Sarah Miles, the lead investigator who had worked tirelessly to bring justice to the case surrounding Emily Carter's accident, had reached out personally. They had uncovered the truth behind the crash: a reckless driver, charged and held accountable. More importantly, the investigation had connected threads to a case that had haunted Michael, the unresolved murder of his late wife, Laura. Sarah shared that the case was finally closed, the perpetrator brought to justice. For years, the burden of uncertainty had weighed heavily on Michael, a shadow that lingered in quiet moments. Hearing the truth, knowing that justice had been served, was a relief beyond words. Yet, as Michael absorbed the news, he felt no bitterness or anger, only a deep, abiding sense of peace. The past, while painful, no longer held him captive. Instead, it fueled a determination to ensure that others could find safety and solace in the face of tragedy. In the weeks that followed, Michael focused on expanding his outreach. He began teaching emergency medical skills to civilians, hosting workshops at community centers and schools. Ethan often joined him, eager to learn and proud of his father's work. One afternoon, as they wrapped up a session on basic first aid, Ethan tugged at Michael's sleeve. "Dad, can I teach this to my friends?" Michael smiled, ruffling his son's hair. "Absolutely. It's important everyone knows how to help." Their bond, strengthened by shared purpose, was a source of constant inspiration. Ethan's youthful enthusiasm reminded Michael of why he had fought so hard, not just to save lives in moments of crisis, but to build a future where those lives could flourish. Emily Carter remained a steadfast friend and collaborator. Together, they continued their campaign, blending Michael's grounded perspective with her expansive platform. Their partnership had grown beyond advocacy into genuine friendship, a testament to the unlikely connections forged in adversity. One evening, Michael found himself alone in his garage, the soft glow of a single overhead light illuminating the space. He reached for a small bracelet that hung from the rearview mirror of his truck, a simple band Laura had given him years before. It was a symbol of a life interrupted, a love that endured, and the promise to never leave a fallen. He touched the bracelet gently, feeling the weight of memories and the strength they lent him. The path ahead was uncertain, but Michael knew he was not walking it alone. As he closed the garage door and headed inside, he glanced back at the truck, a silent guardian of the journey that had brought him here. The worn leather of the steering wheel, the faded photo tucked in the glove compartment, the bracelet swaying softly in the breeze, all reminders of a mission transformed. Michael's life had shifted from one marked by loss and quiet struggle to one defined by purpose and impact. He was no longer just a mechanic or a single father, he was a teacher, a protector, and a beacon of hope. Driving Ethan to soccer practice, Michael felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The road ahead was open, full of challenges and opportunities alike. Whatever came next, he was ready. With a smile, he glanced at Ethan, who was already planning his next game, his next victory. Michael tightened his grip on the steering wheel, heart steady and sure. They were moving forward, together.